A cult? That was a hard question to answer, at least at first. But there was an example of something similar going on in a different religious group.
Scientology is probably the most successful new American religion of the last 100 years.
Because the story of the Duggars sounded a lot like the story of Tom Cruise. But how did that work? In the early 2000s, Scientology was already a fringe idea, but when Tom Cruise publicly started promoting it on talk shows, that's when people started to pay attention.
You know, it's something that has helped me incredibly in my life.
Yeah.
And I've been a Scientologist for over 30 years,
Yeah.
and it's something that, as you know, without it, I wouldn't be where I am.
Yeah.
And soon, Scientology, under the public eye, had many calling it a dangerous cult.
You're completely shut out from the world, and that's the definition of a cult.
A cult is a group of people who have reverence for a particular discipline or a particular leader. And in those terms, yes, Scientology is a cult.
Scientology kept its members carefully monitored and controlled, and those who spoke up were excommunicated and shunned by the community. And just like Scientology, IBLP's members weren't all shiny, happy people. When the Duggars' fame started to spread the word about IBLP's practices and beliefs, several former members started to talk about what really happened in its offices, its seminars, its training centers.
Bill Gothard practices what I would call patriarchy, where husbands, fathers rule in the home. So consequently, this is the pattern that we see in all of his teachings. So all girls and women are subservient to men, and it provides the framework for abuse.
And this confirmed that IBLP was more cult-like than anyone suspected. At its height, IBLP employed almost 300 people. But to control them, Gothard had his staff live on campus in a dorm building specifically designed to manage and oversee every part of their lives. He made sure they were out of contact with the real world. He shamed those who spoke up and kept people compliant with what he said. And if you dared to speak against the movement, you were put inside specially designed prayer rooms, a locked suite you couldn't leave until you obeyed the rules. Women were conditioned that their only role was to marry a man within the movement and carry their children, and to have as many children as possible so that Christians could outgrow Muslims and atheists through birth rates, which explained why the Duggars had 19 children. The Duggars, just like everyone else at IBLP, had been brainwashed to believe that they were doing the Lord's work. They were raising kids who could become politicians and world leaders to reshape America with godly values. But IBLP's values were anything but godly. They were controlling, authoritarian, and dangerous, even violent. To support his goal, Gothard launched a paramilitary program called Alert. The boys who attended Alert became a youth-led Christian militia that would use force to protect the organization at any cost. Everything about IBLP was about control. Control the children, control the next generation, control America. He alone, who owns the youth, gains the future. This wasn't a quote by Bill Gothard. This was Adolf Hitler talking about his own radical paramilitary program, Hitler Youth. Exactly what Gothard and IBLP were doing. Fear and intimidation were their tools. Domination was their goal. And just like many other cults, Gothard was also using his influence and power to seduce and molest young girls. Gothard would become fixated on the teenage girls he met at seminars or camps. He charmed them, praised their maturity, and offered them jobs as his personal assistant, and the parents, awed by this great man, willingly sent their daughters to him. His female helpers constantly surrounded him. It was so common that IBLP insiders jokingly called it Gothard's harem. But behind closed doors, Gothard harassed the girls, pressured them, and made sexual advances.
I felt so embarrassed because my feet kept accidentally bumping into Gothard's, and it just made me feel so terrible. I must have been the most rude person. And then it happened again the next day, and then it happened again the next day. And then it wasn't just bumping into my feet. His feet would start rubbing my feet with his feet under the table.
But because of his status within the movement, no one dared leave or speak up. Until the Duggars, that is. The Duggars' fame brought public attention to IBLP's private plans, and by 2015, after 7 long years of TLC's exposure, IBLP's once great empire was crumbling. Memberships plummeted, sales crashed, and eventually Gothard himself resigned after more than 30 women filed a lawsuit to accuse him of serious sexual crimes. Jim Bob, the head of the Duggar family, offered to take up the leadership of the movement in Gothard's place, but the damage was done. TLC quickly canceled the show because of the controversy. The Duggar spotlight, it seems, served its purpose. It didn't illuminate healthy values or good morals. Instead, it exposed the darkness, bared secrets, and brought evil people into the light. More than that, the story and lawsuit gave hundreds of young people the confidence to step forward and leave the IBLP movement. Through blogs, through podcasts, through talk show experiences, many ex-members have talked about their own experiences leaving the controlling cult, being homeschooled, of being taught harmful lies about the world.
The cult I was in was part of the Institute in Basic Life Principles, which was started by Bill Gothard, and he ran a homeschool program called the Advanced Training Institute. I got sick with like the flu or something, and I remember I was getting cold medicine, and my mom looked at me and she said, "So you're sick, so you must have done something to get sick. God is punishing you because you've gone out from under the umbrella of protection and you've gotten, like, this is why you're sick, is you must have done something to be punished."
For all its insistence on control and distance from the outside, IBLP's most devastating enemy was the voices of its own members. And surprisingly, many of those voices were the Duggar children themselves. At first, they served as the poster kids for a dangerous cult. But many of them speak against it, against their upbringing, against the crimes and control of those in the cult's leadership, even against their own father.
Watching the way that my parents kind of protected my brother, but then used me and some of my sisters, it was hard, and it's still hard to swallow. There's like one point where I call my dad out about it, and I just say, like, "You treat me worse than you treat my brother, my pedophile brother."
That's gotta be painful.
Yeah, it is.
After the end of the Duggars TV show, the shameful exit of the IBLP superleader, and the devastation being exposed by hundreds of ex-IBLP members, how could anyone else get fooled into believing this cult was anything but dangerous? Surely that should be the end of the story, right? Unfortunately, it's not the end. IBLP continues to operate as if nothing ever happened. Search their website and you barely find any mention of Bill Gothard or the Duggars. Their head offices have moved, their board has changed, and they've done their best to repair a shattered image. It might look different on the surface, but their motives are the same. Today, IBLP's youth have grown up to call themselves the Joshua Generation.
The Joshua generation has a conquering spirit. Not just maintain, let me hold my ground, try not to go backwards. Sometimes we have to do that, just stand in faith. But this is a year where you're going to take new ground. Not maintain, but advance. Not hold where I am, but increase. New levels, new opportunities.
This politically motivated group plans to invade the US government from the inside from positions of power and influence. IBLP has not retreated. Even after scandals, shocks, and shame, its influence can still be felt today. But all it took to shake the foundation of this super-secret cult was a voice daring enough to speak out. In silence, evil prevailed, but with voices, IBLP's walls will come crumbling down.